Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. You know, I do coaching and consulting. I get to talk with people one on one for a living and help them with their coffee shops. But one thing I know about coffee is that when you have the right kind of community, you have a support network, you have a resource in each other. You all have the keys to each other's shop in a way. That's why keyholder coaching groups were started by me. This is the industry's premier cafe owner mastermind group that is formatted in a way that allows the members to really speak into each other's lives. I host and facilitate the keyholder coaching groups. It is a paid mastermind group that has now gone on. This next one will be the 5th season of the keyholder coaching groups. We are still accepting applications from people who are interested in being a part of that dynamic community where we get to focus on each other and each other's success for 6 months of the year. It makes a huge difference. So if you're interested, go to the show notes and check the link there. And if it's faster for you, you can simply reach out to me, Chris, at keystotheshop.com. Now, I wanted to talk to you about our sponsor today, the Pacific Barista Series. You can go to pacificfoodservice.com and check out the website there to see all of the great plant-based beverages that they have developed over decades of serving the coffee industry. The baristas that have contributed to making this product an amazing product. Really, it's the secret to why it is so well received. It's made for them. They have engaged, Pacific has engaged the community nonstop since they began doing this to make it work the way you want a plant-based beverage to work. It really is resilient under steaming. It is great texture, great focus on flavor balance. So it's always focused on the coffee, no matter which one of them you get. So get samples sent to you. They'll send you samples. Try it for yourself. Again, that's at pacificfoodservice.com. Right now, I want to introduce the topic that we're talking about, and that is Gen Z and why you should not manage Gen Z. Now, okay, there is maybe a little sensationalism in the title, if you will, because I, as you know, am a big fan of management as probably the most important form of leadership that you can have. Leadership is not just coming up with ideas and vision and all of this stuff. I think we've because our eyes are the commodity for marketers who sell ideas, they have to increase the value of those ideas more and more. And they have to make sure that you feel like you just lack one more idea before you can start to actually do something with what you've accumulated. Doing something with what you've accumulated is actually what I think management is. And that is a form of leadership that is actually accepting that what you've received has the potential that you now need to assist in rendering that potential. But if all you're doing is collecting potentials, you're not leading really, you're not managing, you're just collecting. And it's more of a self satisfying or this never ending pursuit of novel ideas and things like that. In leadership, this is a big problem because you find yourself accumulating leadership books but never actually applying the steps. And we've said it on the show before, you don't want to be listening to this show for years having never actually applied anything that we've talked about, though you've agreed with it, in the life of your cafe. That would be a tragedy. That's more of a cycle of you're trapped. You're trapped in some kind of a cycle of idea consumerism, if you will. And it doesn't really benefit anybody, especially it doesn't benefit your staff. And if you don't realize you're in this cycle, what you do, and I speak about this because I know I've done this before myself, You blame somebody else for the lack of saliency, the lack of relevancy, the lack of application or applicability to your situation because you can't see the fit because you aren't doing what you should be doing with that information or with that idea. And even just with your own time and existing knowledge, you've already started with the presupposition that I don't have enough knowledge. I need to go out and get more knowledge. When in fact, it's not it's not even the knowledge itself that's helpful. It's the idea that you have taken a first step to get something, sometimes that motivates you to do what you knew you needed to do before. I see it in consulting all the time where somebody would tell me, we kind of knew what you were going to say, but now it's time to do something about it. That's a lot of the role that a coach plays, is not coming up with some just brainwave idea. It's actually extracting from you what you already know to do, common sense stuff, and saying, okay, let's clear the air. Let's take a look at what you have. You have all the pieces here, but what is it that we're doing with those things, including your own presence, energy, time, knowledge, and all of that? So, right away, I want you to know that this is not an episode that is about you accumulating some kind of a secret knowledge extracted from, you know, poring over data sets from, interviews from, I don't know where they get the content, maybe clipboards in the mall across the world, uh, about Generation Z or millennials or whatever. And then you're going to aggregate all of this information into some kind of a master plan that'll have you walk into your coffee shop, look at your Gen Z staff, and then say, I know you. I studied you. I studied you in school. I went to I went to the school basically of your generation, and now I can speak with you, fellow kids. I can be in your culture, and I can actually unlock your abilities to do things correctly. And the I can unlock your ability to not give me the Gen Z stare or whatever it is that you're going to sort of have come to your mind as I talk about your issues with your staff right now. There is, again, a large amount of information out there that is meant to sort of massage that part of your brain that says, it's not you, it's them, it's that generation. It's not the fact that you're not doing anything with the information you already have. It's not that you might actually not be doing the basics of management. It's that this is a super, super unique set. This cohort has never existed before. Look at this article. Look at this graph. We have so much information about this group and their preferences that we lose sight of the individuals that we actually have in front of us. Gen Z and any subsequent generation after it is going to be subject to a battery of tests, a gauntlet of gaping eyes, a gauntlet of gawping faces that just look at them and say, tell me more about you people, your generation. And then we're going to take that information and say, now I know how to manage my staff. Well, here's the thing. You can't manage a generation. There, there are individuals, and then there are individuals collectively that we call a generation. If you walk into your cafe and say to whoever it is, Sarah in your staff, apologies, Sarah, if you feel called out here, but if Sarah is a Gen Z barista and you have got done in this just feverish deep dive out of frustration, you're like, I don't get them, I got to get them. Then all of a sudden you get this, I got them, I got it. I had a breakthrough about Gen Z. You walk in the next day, you think, I know how to manage you, Sarah. You and your generation, you like things to have meaning and vision. You like a thing beyond the work. You want to sense of community, right? Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using what I assume is true about the generation because of the data, and I'm going to apply that to you because you value those things. That's what it says here in this study. You, Sarah, individual Sarah, value what millions of data points values. You can tell maybe you get lucky a couple of times where it might actually work. And so your bias starts to come in, the confirmation bias, like, I knew it. I knew it. But it's a lot like those psychics on the Maury Povich show or whatever in the 90s where they're calling out the audience. They're like, somebody here has lost someone important to them. Oh, it's getting closer. Somebody recently. Oh, even closer. So we're deducing by common experience something that is going to affirm for us what we already believed from the beginning. We don't really need much hocus pocus to believe these things. We already walked into this thinking, what I lack is specific knowledge about Generation Z or millennials or whatever. And honestly, it could be Gen X, it could be boomers for all I care. The reason why I think we do this is because we just cannot bring ourselves to believe that it's as simple as it actually is. And what it really boils down to is you don't manage Generation Z. You manage this group of people, this staff that you have right now, based on your knowledge of them as individuals. If you're going to tell me that you've gone out, downloaded free or even paid for studies to examine the differences between generations, but you haven't had a one-on-one in a long time with your staff, then I say you're full of crap. That is such a misappropriation of the asset of your attention, which is an asset to be used in the business to pay attention to what they think, say, do as individuals, whether it is whether you have a group that is completely made up of one generation or one interest range, or you have a very diverse group. I would advocate for you to have as much as you can possibly do, multi-generational, multi-interest. We're talking about a diverse group of people. It's easier to manage that group, I think personally, than it is this like one type of, just monoculture. I think, no matter who you are. And what we miss is the people in front of us. We miss the individuals, and we then dehumanize them in a sense in order to make it easier for us to get around the uncomfortable truth that we actually have to engage with people on a one-to-one basis. We would rather engage with them as a concept and an idea. Back to the first thing I said here. We love ideas. We think that's leadership. It's not. Ideas are things that just happen when you're just walking around, working in the kitchen, taking a shower, going on a walk. And then leadership and management is like what you do with those ideas and in real life. It's easy to have an idea, and it's beautiful to think that maybe this is my full-time job, but it's not. And what you do at the lowest level of your energy and the hardest part of your job is the proof of whether or not you actually have the courage of conviction or integrity with what you believe. And part of what you believe has to be influenced by reality, not concepts. How many of the people that have been interviewed that represent Gen Z do you think are in your staff right now that align so perfectly that all you need to do is, take the AI generated bullet point list of things that it says Gen Z wants and then apply it to your crew and it'll be successful? It won't be. Now, Are there things that might be helpful that you can learn about access to people's thinking based on the cultural environment they live in? Well, I'd say most of us are using digital formats of scheduling, for example, and we have apps that we engage with more than we did 20 years ago, 10 years ago. That's an adjustment that we make. That is something that's not unique only to a current generation, or as they call them, digital natives. It is something that applies to a ton of people. Now, we think about, well, Gen Z, they're so addicted to their phones, they just can't be without their phones. Listen, boomers can't be without their phones either. Then we talk about Gen Z saying, oh, well, I get the Gen Z stare. Well, they're not responding, they're not engaging. Do you know how many literally old people, and I say old, I'm going to turn 48 this year. And I'm talking about people even 20 years older than me, or 15 years older than me, or something like that, that are not, that are exhibiting the exact same traits. They exhibit the same traits. It is not so much that they were born under a moon that determined whether or not they would engage with customers or sweep properly or clock in on time. And they have to just curse the fates. I was born Gen Z and this is just who I am. And I need my manager to go read a study to know how to get me. They just need to get me. No, it's just learned behavior that is nurtured over time that you need to be in charge of leading and managing day to day. It is not so unique that it doesn't exist in other types of generations. So I want us to get out of this idea that somehow there's a secret code or language or set of tools that we need to manage Gen Z outside of the basics that we as human beings have responded to well and not so well over multiple generations beyond when we started tracking different facts and figures and proclivities of generations. Okay, basics, if you're not doing them, will cause you to believe that there's some sensational secret gnostic kind of hidden knowledge that you should be figuring out in order to unlock, because by golly, I've tried everything, but you probably haven't. And when you say everything, it's just us fooling ourselves into thinking we have. So in a nutshell, as we start out here, that's why you don't manage Gen Z, you manage individuals and people, because that is who is on your staff. And plenty of people don't align with and don't practice the things that the reports say they practice, even within a generation. So what are we to do, actually do in our businesses? Well, here's what we're going to do. If you have a Gen Z staff and you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, like, how do I manage my staff? And you have been led to believe that it's because you haven't unlocked the secret knowledge of Gen Z. What we're going to do is apply basics. First of all, we're going to do what we call the manager's landscape. If you're a leader, you're a manager. If you're not managing, you're not leading. I wouldn't call you a leader. That's just the reality of it. Now, managing this group of people that you have means getting to know them. And if I was to sit down with you and ask you questions for an hour about one person on your staff based on your knowledge of them, you're probably going to have a lot of your own data about that person. And you can write that down and know that individual because you've experienced them, even if they've only worked for you for a couple of months. That's the first thing that you should do. It's the "you are here" star on the mall map of your coffee shop. What is the makeup currently of the staff you have? Bruce Tulgan talks about this in his book, It's Okay to Be the Boss. And he's talking about the manager's landscape, asking questions like, who is this person at work? What needs to be managed in their work? Why? where is it best to manage that? Their preferences, right? It doesn't, sometimes people don't care about being, coached in public. Sometimes they do. What about when? Is it before the shift, after the shift, in a one? Where is it for that person? And when you have that kind of breakdown, this dossier on that person, you move on to your next staff and you think about them too. Now, this is the kind of work that I think is very practical for leaders, that brings us out of the realm of concept and into the world of reality. It is so basic that it feels distasteful. Like we don't want to do that. I would much rather go for a jog and listen to a leadership book. Can't I just listen to Seven Habits again? Gosh, no. You have to actually develop habits. that's that's the thing that we have to do. So that'd be step one. Now, I'd say almost in tandem with that, you've got to know what it is you're looking for in your work. And it can't just be vibes. You've got to be a little bit more specific about what you're looking for in this work. Many times, what we do is in coffee shops, we say, well, there's high turnover. Yeah, I'm going to hire a bunch of young people. And if they're friendly, if they got some energy, I'm just going to hire them. Now, you're kind of selling them short at that moment because you're assuming that they don't have much complexity because they're young. But there are people within, again, every generation, and yes, in Gen Z and in the future, Gen Alpha, that are very, very hardworking, innovative, full of integrity, service to others. Those people exist. I know plenty of people within the Gen Z generation that are working on their own businesses. They are leading, they are great exemplars of excellence in work. And the reason why you might not have that on your staff is because you have a hiring problem, because you don't know what you're hiring for, because you haven't gone through and said what are the types of people and or the behaviors that exemplify our business that we're going to look for in the individual. And we're not going to go, hey, we value creativity and innovation, and that means we're going to hire people of this age. No, that's stupid, because every generation has people who are creative, not creative, and etc. There's a range. Start with the assumption that there is a range of options and fit within each generation, but know what it is you're looking for first. If you don't know what you're looking for, anything will be right until it doesn't work out later. And then it's almost going to be impossible to trace back why it's not working to anything that you did. This is why we start blaming generations a lot of times. Okay, so you need to have alignment. So there needs to be an alignment, or it's going to be misaligned. When you hire, you've got to really know that this person is going to fulfill a role in your business that is a meaningful role, not just a role that you thought, well, businesses like mine have roles like these, therefore I will have these roles. You've got to, again, get out of concept, get into reality, and think about what it is they're going to do. Because, like anybody, we all want to be useful. So we think it's this weird thing that Gen Z wants to have meaning in their work. Oh, heaven forbid. People want meaning in their work. You can watch documentaries about people who work in organizations because they believe in the company. Whether you're talking about the people that were working for 40 years in large institutions back, decades ago, those people were company people because they believed in something that transcended their work. Even if it wasn't the company itself, it was what the company provided for their family that was more important than work. Okay. So it's just a transference of the same kind of concept to a different subject. Even if Gen Z says they want where they work to be sustainably minded and meaningful in some way that's societally impactful, like that's still a concept that older generations had, and it's because we're human beings. Okay, so instead of quibbling about where that idea of transcendence and meaning and purpose is located, or how it's expressed, let's start talking about what it means to be meaningful in the business right now. So if you haven't architected your business, or the role of a barista, a lead barista, a manager, to have any kind of substantive meaning in your business, you can't provide meaning for your staff. And your business, if it's aligned with what they already have in their mind as valuable, this is back to hiring. If you are a business that is about social welfare and social impact, and you hire people who don't have that same mindset, you're misaligned. But they have values elsewhere. In their focus is to pursue meaning and value in a different stream than yours. That's fine, but they shouldn't have been hired to begin with. And maybe you don't have the ability to hire everybody to align perfectly, but you do have the ability to hire people who have complementary or aligned, completely aligned values, at least complementary in some way. And even just the structure of finding yourself in a business where you know what it looks like to win at work, to do a good job because it's defined for you. Even if that's just a job for you selling ice cream as a teenager, knowing what it feels like to have done a good job and that you are being affirmed and even coached to a particular end, not just an amorphous do better, that will help you. And it will feel more meaningful than the ambiguity that we often use as a replacement for good management. So you've got to have meaningful roles in the cafe and focus on alignment. Again, I say this all the time because people rush to the hiring process. Let's focus on finding out whether those values that we know we have in our business, that we've worked hard to define, are in their possession already and are things that they either exude or pursuing already. And we don't hire people based on just, well, they're available and that, whatever. We'll work it out. I'll raise them up. We'll fix that. You won't, probably. You don't have the time. I mean, you're already busy running the business. And now you're going to become some kind of a like guidance counselor to people. You're not. So in my mind, it starts with hiring. But once you get people hired, you've got to lead, and you've got to lead in and amongst the group. Don't focus on. We always say your power and your authority is not something. It's not for you. It's a tool to use for other people's benefit. I talked about the asset of your energy. I talked about the asset of your presence. These are things that are assets to others. Now, yeah, it means the business is going to do better, right? Overall, when you use it this way. But it really is true that a inverted triangle where the bottom is the leader, and then you've got layers of leadership and management there, and then you've got baristas, and then you've got customers, right? That's a better way to think about things and set it up for success, that that it manages those generations for you almost, because it creates such specificity in your business. First, to have these values. Second, to serve the needs of everybody who are on their way to fulfill the values of your business, which means that you're serving the greater goal that everyone has, to create great work within the bounds of the work that's been defined. That eliminates most all of your problems right there. It really does. And it doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen in 6 months. If you are a coffee shop owner right now listening to this and you've been open for a little bit, you've got to give yourself the better part of 1 year or more to turn things around, because you may have hired people that you shouldn't have hired. You may have a history of leading and managing that is more about abdication of responsibility and authority than it is a responsible use of your authority and power in the business to serve others and to really specifically focus on your people, those individuals, right? It takes a lot of time. Sometimes turnover, when it happens, this is an opportunity for you to raise the bar again on who you bring in that starts to change the culture and align it more closely with where you wanted things in the beginning. I've seen it happen over and over again, but it takes discipline, it takes focus, and it takes attending to the basics. Really, I would like you to focus specifically on, first of all, do you have a meaningful process and is it on your schedule to notice things, to know your people, to have conversations with them in one-on-ones, to have a real carved out, invested in institution in your business, and you know it's going to happen on a regular basis. And I don't mean monthly. That's not enough. That's way too infrequent when it comes to one-on-ones or check-ins and things like that. We're talking about at least every 2 weeks or so, bi-monthly. If it's not actually a part of your process and you get to it when you get to it, then you don't believe in it and it won't work. Application of disciplines proves the worth of that discipline and brings to fruition that habit's benefits. If you don't do that, you will not see them and you will jump to another hot idea from a book, from a podcast, having thought you tried something when you actually never did. So you have to have great role clarity and expectations for your staff. You say, well, I want to manage Gen Z. Well, again, it's time to deprogram your mind. Flush the studies. Study your people. Examine for value alignment. Act on value alignment with more integrity into the future. Have role clarity for the people you bring on and have specific expectations. And you also, just like anyone, I think, have to allow people to contribute to the evolution of those roles and the evolution of expectations, SOPs, and processes, and things like that. This co-creative element is not unique to this cohort. This is just a part of our nature. We want to participate in something. Okay. And so professional boundaries are another thing that we definitely are wanting to make sure are intact, where yes, things are meaningful. Yes, things are aligned, but this is actually a job. It is not a family. It is a job. It is a good job, hopefully, and it will become a better job. But every individual is given the platform on which to insert their desired meaning into the work. But the work itself is that stable platform on which they voluntarily can say to you, it's familial, it's or just a job. But we honestly, you can't complain about this. If they do the job very, very well, and you say, well, they're just doing their job, then that's a you problem because you want something that's irrational. You want above and beyond only because you don't know how to define the standard. That's not a generation problem. That's a leadership problem. Tools to do the job well, training people well. We think we do this, but a lot of times it's sink or swim. We started with this magical idea of this group of people is going to do this type of thing, and therefore we took ourselves out of the equation of happening to or having a hand to craft the reality and the product of our work. And what we do is we say, well, if they're the right person for the job, they'll do a great job right away. Again, we're running away from personal accountability and responsibility. You've got to train people very, very well, very specifically for a fairly applied, consistent standard across the board on all things that happen to, represent your work. Yes, that includes sweeping, mopping, wiping tables, making cappuccinos, clocking in, You have to teach these things. Now, some people you're going to have to teach less, but don't let that be a sign to you that you've hired the wrong people. Everybody needs to be trained. Alignment with your business isn't supposed to coincide with easy on you. Just because it's easy on you doesn't mean that's not a value. Now, there are people that you will look at and say, well, they actually aren't doing the job that they were trained to do. They are pushing against values that we have in a very real way. Yeah, of course, these are the kind of folks that they are telling you, basically, I don't want to work here. Now, you can try as you will, have a process for restoration, a process for accountability, but you might need to fire some folks. That's just the reality. But we don't jump to that conclusion, right? You need to provide those resources, clarity and tools and direction and affirmation to people. Give them an idea that they're actually doing a good job. When I talk to people at coffee shops, sometimes in assessments and some management or baristas, how do you know you're doing a good job is answered occasionally with, actually more than occasionally, well, I'm not being told I'm doing a bad job. And it's because people are busy, they're not talking, it's not they're being malicious necessarily. It's more like, hey, um, I'm floundering here. I'd like to know that I'm doing good work. And my coworkers become the source of affirmation, which means we're developing a gap between leadership and staff. Where now you'd think, why are people not giving feedback, engaging, etc.? It's because we have not been engaging. It's because we have not told people that they're doing good work. And they know that maybe you don't even see their work. So if you say good work, they don't believe you, because what exactly are you talking about? You've got to be specific, substantive, specific in your affirmations of people. Just like you would like to be specific with coaching. You can't just be like, hey, team, we got to do better. All right, good meeting. You can't just be like, high five, good job, keep killing it, and expect people to be like, good. Check one for today, killed it, killed it. Well, I didn't get any specific guidance. And so in my record book, I've been killing it, but your idea of killing it is different. So that's useless. We got to be more specific. Give people direction. You can coach them, make this a frequent thing, affirmation, a frequent thing, and watch people just open up. Now, the other thing, of course, that you have to think about is payment, value for the work. You've got to think about the monetary value. We always talk about pay what you can, not what you can get away with. Just a spirit of generosity and openness with people, sincerity, being genuine. If there's anything that I think people today, maybe it is a generational difference. The one thing that I'll concede here is the idea of people being able to smell disingenuous people. If you are not sincere and really coming from a perspective of generosity and service and being clear and direct, actually being a sincere person, then people will see that a lot easier, because today we've got to sort through a bunch of bull crap. Okay. That's the problem. And so when it comes to pay and advancement and being generous, if you don't have good reasons, if you don't have things laid out, if you don't actually have a generous disposition that wants to benefit other people, and actually you really just want to pay as little as you possibly can, but you try to sound generous, then it won't work. Now, this is not a call for you to go ahead and break the bank and just pay people a ton of money that you don't have. You have limitations, but it's up to you to do the work to know what you can pay. And if people ask, you can tell them because you've done the work. But a lot of people haven't done the work. They don't know what they can pay. They just pay what they pay because that's the competitive landscape, or they, whatever minimum wages, that's what we're going to pay. Now, that might, in some states, align with what you are able to pay, because of the idea of higher than other states' minimum wage, right? But the issue is not necessarily the numbers themselves, it's the disposition and approach of the people that are applying those numbers. If the person signing my check is on my side and trying to find ways for me to make more money and be more successful, though limited with their money. And I know that they can't pay me more because, like, it's obvious there's not really any business. That is something I think you can really share with people, not in a sense of shutting them up, like saying, "Oh, stop asking me questions about more money. Can't you see, you idiot? Look at there's no money." No, it's more like a generous disposition is one that's educational, that's invitational, that's, let's invite you to be a part of the solution too. If, we all share in the benefit of this company, then that's great. You want people to stay with you longer, that co-creative element, sharing in the success of the company, seeing a direct line from my work to the company's flourishing. These are the types of things that businesses, no matter what generation you are working with, are going to provide for their staff that is meaningful. It actually keeps staff around longer, and the right staff around longer too, right? So, the last thing, of course, that you want to be working on is yourself. And the way you work on yourself is to actually apply the things that you are convicted of right now, that you're convinced are the right things for you to do, because you've known for a while, you've accumulated this knowledge in books and whatever, but you haven't really put it into practice. That's how you work on yourself. Working on yourself is not a process of individual isolated manifestation and then you enter the cafe like the rising sun when your glory is, casting warmth upon everything. It's more like you generate that warmth and that light by working in the midst of all of that. You are a present, humble leader. You are somebody who is available, there, invested. You are resourcing. You are a point of clarity. You are somebody who is practicing and the habits of good management, good communication, others focused mindset, outward mindset. And it shows in your work because it's proved in your work, not by your words, not by your ideas, not your knowledge about something, but your experiential knowledge that is evident in the past work that you've done with people. And they can say, I know so and so is a great manager and is on my side as a good leader. And even when they've coached me on things or had to guide me, and maybe there's some discipline involved there, I can vouch for that person and what they believe about me in this business. It's not an offense. It's actually something that helps me become more resilient. It's the stuff that people who are in formation, if you hire younger people, you complain about them, but look at, you are given an opportunity to help shape people simply by applying these basics. That's not the same as saying, I'm going to hire the wrong people and make them the right people by force. No, this is more like hiring the right people, but still recognizing that even as young people, they still need guidance. And the world of work and who they are as a person is in formation. And in a sense, you are too. That's why you can be humble. You are a new business owner. Maybe you haven't done this before. And even if you've done this many years, and this is a new business for you, it's still going to be sort of like day one in a sense. So you're all in process together. And taking that perspective is going to help you manage your staff. Not some generation, your staff. And that's the point. And that's how we make great cultures. That's how we make great coffee shops. And that's what we wanted to talk about today. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I would love to talk with you more if you're interested in coaching and consulting. Keys to the Shop works one-on-one with coffee shop owners and their management teams to help make things better and to help you start on the right foot too. So Chris at keystotheshop.com, and also key holder coaching groups. We've got about 10 days before we close the applications for the spring cohort for this thing. So reach out, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks, everybody. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.